أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome, Seeker. I am so glad you're here with us for this explainer. Before we really get going, please forgive and just overlook any slight AI mispronunciations of the sacred Arabic. Today, we're diving deep into the inversion of might and the true anatomy of arrogance, specifically looking at the second cluster of Surah al-Munāfiqūn. Let's jump right into it.
Okay, so if you recall, in the first part of the surah, we examined the hidden fractures of the heart, basically the internal diagnosis of hypocrisy. Well, now we're taking that diagnosis out of the private chambers of the heart and walking it straight into the very public streets of Madinah. We're shifting from this invisible spiritual disease to how it actually presents itself socially and physically.
And you know what's truly fascinating here? It's how the Quran diagnoses spiritual blindness. 3 separate times in these verses, God says the hypocrites do not understand or do not know. The issue isn't a lack of data or information. The real disease is an absence of recognition. It's this stubborn arrogance that literally and violently refuses to receive the exact divine healing that would cure it.
Which brings us to Section 1, the anatomy of arrogance and the refused petition. We're going to start by looking at a physical gesture of rejection found in verse 5. To really grasp the spiritual reality here, we first have to observe the historical reality, the outer manifestation or the zahir of the hypocrite's pride. Historically, this verse centers around Abdullah ibn Ubay. When his own kinsman urged him to go to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, to ask for forgiveness, Ibn Ubay didn't just politely decline. The Arabic word used here is lilawa, meaning he literally theatrically twisted his head away in visible disgust. It's just a towering act of arrogance.
But what does this mean for the heart? As we transition to the batin, the inner spiritual reality, we really have to ask ourselves a pretty uncomfortable question. How often do we internally twist away from correction or divine mercy? How does this ancient, theatrical gesture of turning the head mirror our very own internal resistance to grace?
This contrast brilliantly highlights the Sufi understanding of the verse. Imam al-Qushayri explains that while the outer turning, the zahid, is a political sneer, the inner refusal, the batin, is much darker. It's the ego repeating Iblis's original cosmic sin of pride, that little whispered thought of, I am better than him. Modern psychology actually calls this hubristic pride. It's a rigid defensiveness that treats any offered correction as an absolute intolerable threat to the ego.
And there is just a beautiful mathematical harmony here too. In the abjad system, the Arabic word for seeking forgiveness, istighfar, reduces to the number 5. Think of 5 as representing a threshold. Seeking forgiveness is a threshold act where our ego actually has to thin out and surrender so that a higher mode of perception can open up. To twist your head away, that is violently refusing to cross that threshold.
Moving right along to Section 2, the illusion of wealth and the treasury. Let's look at verse 7, where we see how this deeply personal arrogance metastasizes into a cruel, calculated economic plot.
The hypocrites actively schemed to cut off financial support to the vulnerable migrants in Madinah. Their goal was to force them to abandon the Prophet. It's a very clinical, almost modern political strategy, right? Deny resources to dismantle the community. But the Quran just brilliantly shatters their illusion of financial sovereignty with one single phrase: to God belong the treasures of the heavens and the earth.
The hypocrite fundamentally believes he controls the purse strings. He genuinely thinks he's the sovereign of the supply lines. But this raises a profound metaphysical question for all of us about our own bank accounts. Whose hands truly hold the treasures? Who is the actual owner, and who is merely the temporary custodian?
What we're really looking at is what behavioral economists today call the fundamental attribution error. We tend to credit our wealth entirely to our own brilliance and choices. But centuries before modern psychology even existed, Al-Ghazali taught that this pride comes from confusing the worldly means with the divine cause. We completely forget our absolute dependence on the Creator, tricking ourselves into believing we are the source of the provision rather than just its channel.
The abjad value for the word treasures, khazayan, mathematically reduces to the number 2. I absolutely love this because it proves that wealth is always relational. It's a relationship between the divine owner and the human custodian. It is never an absolute private possession. It's never a one. The hypocrite's ultimate tragedy is misreading that too as a private one.
All right, Section 3, the inversion of might. This brings us to the 8th verse and the famous boast that really anchors this entire revelation.
Here, we witness a breathtaking inversion of power. Ibn Ubay boasted that his faction, which he called the mightier, would expel the believers, whom he called the weaker. In sociology, you'd call this realistic conflict theory, competing for finite resources and status. But Ibn Ubay catastrophically misunderstood whose city Medina actually was and exactly whose universe he was standing in.
The great masters Ibn Arabi and Rumi gently remind us of the massive difference between visible might, things like rank, lineage, or bank accounts, and hidden might. Staking your soul on visible, worldly might is investing in a form that is absolutely guaranteed to collapse. True might, the izzah of the meaning, belongs only to the unchanging real, descending to his messenger, and inherited by the believers.
And once again, the arithmetic is just perfect. The word for might, izzah, mathematically reduces to the number 1. This is the very signature of Tawheed, the oneness of God. True might rests exclusively with the one God. Anyone else claiming it is just trying to wear a number they simply cannot afford.
Finally, Section 4, Practices for the Heart, or Tazkiyah. O seeker, understanding these verses isn't just some intellectual or historical exercise. It's a direct, urgent call to our own inner purification. We need ikhlas, sincerity, and deep reliance on God. I want you to really notice your own physical gestures this week. When someone offers you correction or prays for you or offers you love or help, do you feel that muscular reflex of refusal right in your neck? Neurologically speaking, accepting help registers in the brain very similarly to physical pain. So watch your neck. Are you turning away from mercy?
Here is a practical, gentle roadmap for Tazkiyah. First, try to name a mercy or an apology you refused today. Second, intentionally sit with someone you secretly deem lower in status and deliberately receive wisdom from them. And third, just pause silently before you spend any money to remember the true provider. Remind yourself that the treasures truly belong to him.
To cure this deep-seated arrogance, the Sufi masters prescribe khumul, which is chosen obscurity. It's the deliberate willingness to be unseen and unrecognized. This gentle practice heals the heart's hardened organ. It literally reteaches the soul how to receive divine light and mercy through absolute, quiet humility.
As we reflect on all these powerful truths, let's close with this beautiful munajat, a whispered prayer. O Lord, untwist the neck I turn away. Unbar the door my pride still keeps locked tight. Restore the treasury to its true hand and teach the lowly tongue to learn its might. We ask Allah to soften our hearts, to help us cross that threshold of forgiveness, and to cure us of this disease of unrecognition before our time runs out. Amen.
May your heart always be open to receiving the mercy that is constantly being poured upon you. So I leave you with this to ponder. The next time grace knocks on your door, will you untwist your neck, or will you remain locked in the prison of your own pride? Compiled with gratitude by Mir Ali Shah, a seeker sharing through the Living the Wisdom of the Quran explainer. Until next time.